everyone, and welcome to a new video. My name is Marianne Guevara, and today we'll be doing a continuation of my bookshelf tour. So last time I showed you my classics, and today I'll be showing you this shelf. And this is honestly, I would say, like the most hodgepodge of shelves I own. You have lots of genres here. My classics, as I mentioned before, I arrange in edition. And when it comes to like the rest of my books, I arrange them by genre. So we got some nonfiction, we got some short stories, we got horror, and then we got some historical fiction. So there really is no rhyme or reason why it's like that. That's just how this shelf came to be. So we'll be tackling this entire shelf in this video. So without further ado, let's get started. So starting off this shelf, we have the nonfiction section, and we have here The Romantic Egoists, a pictorial autobiography from the scrapbooks and albums of Scott and Zelda Fitzgerald. So the Fitzgeralds documented a lot of their lives. I don't know of many other authors who documented their lives, through pictures as much as the Fitzgeralds did. But yeah, we have plenty of photos of Scott and Zelda and Scotty and a lot of their friends. And it's just so fascinating to flip through and see little snippets of their lives. Next, we have this cute little book. This is the thought book of F. Scott Fitzgerald, A Secret Boyhood Diary. So this is basically the diary of a young F. Scott Fitzgerald. So when he was growing up in St. Paul, Minnesota, he actually kept a diary that he would have hidden. And so inside is that diary. It's very short, but very entertaining. Next to that, we have Dear Scott, Dear Zelda. So these are the love letters of F. Scott and Zelda Fitzgerald. So this book basically chronicles their letters to one another from their days of courtship all the way to basically Scott's death in 1940. And yeah, this is an excellent, excellent book. I have read it in a different copy, and this is a new one. So I need to go back through it and properly tab it, but I really enjoyed this book. So moving on from the Fitzgeralds, we now have Julius Caesar. This is Life of a Colossus by Adrian Goldsworthy. I was quite fascinated with Roman history for some time, especially Julius Caesar, especially that time period where he was very prominent, sort of the end of the Roman Republic and the beginnings of the Roman Empire. This is an excellent biography by Goldsworthy, and for quite a while this was like a bedtime read that I would read a bit of it every time before I go to bed. Very enthralling stuff in here. So yep. And then moving on, we have another book of letters that is The Habit of Being by Flannery O'Connor. This is one of my favorite books of last year, and it's been tabbed to high heaven. This is such a great sort of glimpse into who Flannery O'Connor was, all of her wit, her thoughts on her, not only her stories, but on writing and religion. I just adored this book. If you are a fan of Flannery O'Connor and you haven't read any of her letters, I highly recommend that you do so. Next, we have a weird one, and that is the screenplay for The Apartment by Billy Wilder and I.A.L. Diamond. You may be wondering, why do you have the screenplay when you have the film? And that's true, but I really like it having the screenplay because flipping through it, you notice that some scenes, some lines are just, they have been reduced, they have been removed. And so there are little differences between the screenplay and the final product that I really like. Next, we have some short stories, and I have to highlight this. This is In the Country by Mia Alvar. So these are a group of stories, or a collection of stories that all center around sort of the Filipino diaspora. We're following expatriates, Filipinos who are living in the United States, in the Middle East. There's one story where we follow someone who is visiting the Philippines, but then we're also following Filipinos who have decided to stay in the country. And what I love especially about this collection is that Mia Alvar is able to portray such distinct, different experiences out of the Filipino diaspora. Like, each of these stories just feel like unique, basically. They don't feel samey. They don't feel like they repeat. They all feel fresh. And I believe this is her debut, and it's very impressive for a debut. I'm looking forward to more work from Yalvar. You don't hear a lot of people talking about this, but it's a fantastic book. Each of the stories for me were like 5 stars, and I just love this cover. I got this in the Philippines, so I don't even know if it's available anywhere else, but yeah, that's in the country. And speaking about short stories, of course we have the queen of them herself, as I like to call her, that is Flannery O'Connor. All of them have this beautiful sort of like white background with watercolor, so we have the complete stories by her. Yeah, this has all her short stories in them, and it's the winner of the National Book Award. I highly recommend that if you're gonna get into Flannery O'Connor, start off with her short stories. Next, we have Everything That Rises Must Converge. After that, we have her 2 novels. Unfortunately, she only ever wrote 2 before she passed away pretty young. So we have Wise Blood, and then we have The Violent Bear It Away, another favorite book from last year. Next, we have the little horror section, and they're basically just black and dark colors. You can tell what part of the shelf is the horror section. It's very color-coded quite nicely. So the first thing we have here is this collection of The Raven of the poems by Edgar Allan Poe. And what I really like about this collection is that there are illustrations by Edmund Dulac. I know there's a bit of annoying glare, but just look at that. So this is one of them. This is The Pilgrim Shadow from El Dorado. So yeah, I just really enjoy the illustrations in this book. So moving past Poe, we have here The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers. For those who don't know, The King in Yellow is a pretty popular figure within weird fiction. This sort of character was created by Robert W. Chambers, but I know it's been sort of absorbed into the Lovecraft mythos. So this actually contains the first 4 stories in the entire King in Yellow. I guess it's called like saga or something. Because apparently, after the 4th story, the rest of them end up becoming a bit more romantic compared to, just being weird fiction. And that's because I believe Chambers went on to become a romance author and then step away from weird fiction. I guess romance paid more back then. But I think these are 4 very interesting weird fiction stories. And if you're into weird fiction classics or you want to get into it, definitely check out The King in Yellow. And then following Chambers, we have some H.P. Lovecraft. Now, this, unlike The Call of Cthulhu and other weird stories, The Dreams in the Witch House, The Thing on the Doorstep, this is actually a collection of stories where he collaborated with other authors. So he either inspired some of these stories, he revised, or maybe he co-authored. And because of that, this is definitely, I would consider the weakest out of the collections I've read. But this really is basically a mixed bag, like half and half for me. But yeah, if you want to be like a Lovecraft completist and all of that, I would still say check this one out. So moving on, we have a book that's pretty controversial, I guess in terms of like reception, but that's I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. Now, funny story, I actually picked this one up mistaking it for another book, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm glad I did so because I'm one of those people who really enjoyed this book. Not gonna lie, this is one of the few books in recent years that have genuinely scared me. I read this one evening in one go, and yeah, I was genuinely unnerved. I know some people find it either confusing or they feel that the ending is a cop-out, but I really enjoyed this book. I think it was just incredibly effective overall, and it did manage to get to me, so that's the important part. Following that, we have The Silence of the Lambs, one of my favorites and one of my favorite film adaptations for sure. This is the 25th anniversary edition, and this is the 2nd book in the Hannibal Lecter series, and I actually have read all 4 of them. So it's Red Dragon, The Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal, and then Hannibal Rising. This and Red Dragon are like the best ones. Hannibal was okay. And then I literally don't remember anything about Hannibal Rising. So yeah, definitely just go for like The Silence of the Lambs. It's just an excellent crime thriller. Then we have Coraline. This is one of the instances where I actually prefer the film adaptation to the book. Like I like the Leica stop motion animation one I prefer that over this book, but still solid. And lastly, for the horror section, we have Goth by Otsuichi. Yeah, this is one of those horror books that also got me, because there's a point in each of the stories, like as you're reading, they drop a little twist and it kind of gets you. At least that's the way it was for me. So yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite sort of Japanese novels I've read. So after the horror, we have the historical fiction section, which is the last part of this shelf. And I've arranged them in a chronological order, so from when the book or the story takes place. So we're starting off with the Regency period. It's so weird going from Otsuichi's Goth to Georgette Heyer's Friday's Child, but that's how it is. Firstly, Georgette Heyer, for those who don't know, is, I guess she's the one who sort of pioneered the whole Regency romance subgenre. I believe she started writing Regency romances like late 1920s. So she has a lot of Regency romances. She's wrote, I believe, mysteries, but I mainly read her for her romances, and Friday's Child is my favorite. When it comes to Regency romances, I really like the trope of marriage of convenience, and that's what this one is about. It's fun. This is just rompy fun, and I just adore Friday's Child. So next to Friday's Child, we have Sprig Muslin. This one I got at Books A Million for like $5.80, so I couldn't pass that up. This was just another fun, rompy Georgette Heyer. I'm much more a fan of those kinds of Heyers compared to ones that are just a tad more serious when compared to ones like these. And then over here we have Phantom by Susan Kay. Now, Phantom by Susan Kay is like what Wicked was for The Wicked Witch of the West. This is sort of like the origin story of the Phantom of the Opera. And the thing is, in the original novel, Gaston Leroux gives us a sort of outline of what Eric, the Phantom's, past was. But Susan Kay sort of like fills in the blanks and gives in details. And I remember reading this back in the day and really loving it. I feel like it's so easy when it comes to like Phantom adaptations to make the story just cringy, but I did not feel that way when I read Phantom. I was prepared back then to read some cringy fanfiction, and I was surprised that it didn't feel like that. So I should definitely reread this one, but if you're interested in sort of like the backstory, a detailed backstory of the Phantom of the Opera, I would recommend this by Susan Kay. Now we have the last book on this shelf, and in this tour, we have here Set in Stone by Linda Newberry, a book that I don't see anyone else own or even talk about. So Set in Stone I read in high school and I really enjoyed, and then I recently read it again and I still enjoy it. I believe this even won an award back in the day. I believe this is also classified as young adult, I think to its detriment, because honestly, when you classify something as young adult, I feel there are certain expectations that are put upon it. And I would classify this more as sort of like an homage to classic Gothic or Victorian sensation novels, a la Wilkie Collins. If you go into this book thinking more of like, oh, this is an homage to sensation novels, I feel like you're going to enjoy it more compared to someone who goes into this thinking they're going to get like a creepy YA novel. So that is the end of this bookshelf tour, or rather this section of it. Next video, or at least the next installment in the series, will be moving on to my fantasy and sort of like science fiction shelf. But thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!